Judge Robert Halston's voice cracks like a whip. All you've ever brought this city is chaos, girl from the projects. He leans over the bench, eyes hard. Look at me when I decide your future. His gavel slams, and 19-year-old Amara Lewis stands rigid, pulse roaring in her ears. The white gallery chuckles under its breath. Halston steps down, strolling toward her, presence filling the space like a threat made flesh. Without warning, Halston yanks the case file from Amara's hands, scattering pages across the polished floor like trash. "Pick them up, now," he orders, loafer tapping with theatrical impatience as she crouches to retrieve each sheet. Her overworked public defender, Mr. Keller, stares at the table, saying nothing. "People like you forget where you stand," Halston mutters, marching back to the bench. Amara presses her worn spiral notebook tight against her chest. Inside that little notebook, beneath taped receipts and scribbled dates, lies the evidence that could shatter Halston's career before sunset. Morning light washes over the county courthouse's cracked stone facade. Amara smooths the wrinkles from her pale blue blouse, the nicest shirt she owns. Her father, Marcus Lewis, walks beside her in his freshly pressed maintenance uniform. They couldn't afford time off, and they definitely couldn't afford a private lawyer. "Remember what I told you," Marcus murmurs as they climb the courthouse steps. "Back straight, speak up, look them in the eye no matter what." Amara nods, fingers tight around her notebook like it's life support. She spent weeks filling those pages. In the hallway, their assigned defender, Mr. Keller, hustles toward them, juggling a stack of bursting folders before finally fishing out one labeled, in fading ink, Lewis, Amara. "Lewis, Amara, right," Keller mutters, barely glancing up. "That hotel trespass thing." He flips a page. "You're in Halston's courtroom today. Listen, you really should grab the plea. First offense, or second if we count that park situation." "But I wasn't," Amara tries to explain. Keller slices through her words. "Halston comes down hard on, well, kids from your side of town. Community service is better than juvenile lockup. Sawia Dane, sex." Across town, in an immaculate Lakeside Heights mansion, Judge Halston knots a tie while studying his reflection. His wife sets his coffee, where he expects it, beside the folded paper. "Juvenile calendar today," he grumbles, checking his Rolex. "Kids wasting everyone's time. One of them slipped into the Regal Plaza Hotel," he dials. "Greg, about that trespasser at your place, relax. I'll make an example. People need reminders where they belong." Back at the courthouse, Amara sits in the second row, watching case after case glide across the docket. A white teenager caught shoplifting leaves with a lecture in 20 hours of service. Another white kid, busted for tagging a storefront, gets his fine cut down after his father pleads with Halston. Then a black teen steps forward on a loitering charge, and Halston's tone freezes. His sentence suddenly, the harshest version, aloud. Amara's pen flies over the page, turning what she sees into rows of numbers and quick observations. The bailiff calls, "Lewis, Amara," and a sharp-eyed woman in the back straightens, gaze locking on Halston. Amara walks to the defense table, steps measured, palms damp. Halston barely glances up. "Another trespass," he sighs. "Contagious lately." Keller clears his throat. "Your Honor, my client is a first-time offender." "Second," Halston snaps, tapping a folder. "I see a prior incident at Eastview Park after hours," Halston says, eyes narrowing. "I was studying," Amara answers softly before she can stop herself. "Our lights were cut again. The park has benches under street lamps, so Did I invite commentary? Halston cuts in sharply. Mr. Keller, control your client. Keller mumbles an apology, but Amara's cheeks burn as if she's been slapped in front of the whole county. The prosecutor rises, smoothing his tie like he's on camera. Your Honor, the defendant was located in a restricted corridor of the Regal Plaza Hotel, adjacent to executive conference suites housing expensive equipment. Security footage confirms she had no legitimate reason to be there. Halston leans forward, steepling his fingers. Anything to say for yourself, Ms. Lewis? He asks, his voice oozing false patience that doesn't quite hide the contempt beneath. I was there for a program, Amara begins, voice catching. A program, Halston repeats, lips curling. The Regal Plaza doesn't host programs for... He stops just short of finishing, the insult obvious anyway. Keller tries again. Your Honor, maybe a fine and standard service hours would... Mr. Keller, Halston interrupts. This court treats trespass into high-end establishments seriously. It starts with trespass, ends with theft. Patterns matter, especially with repeat behavior. Halston's gaze drifts over Amara's neatly pressed but plainly second-hand clothes. The defendant has already shown a habit of turning up where she doesn't belong, he declares. In the gallery, Marcus shifts in his seat, knuckles paling as he grips his knees. A court officer edges closer. A wordless warning. Through it all, Amara keeps scribbling, her pen steady, as if writing could anchor her against the humiliation piling up. What are you writing? Halston suddenly snaps. Amara startles. Just notes, Your Honor. Hand it over! He extends his palm like he's collecting contraband. This is my courtroom, not some school desk. Amara hesitates, then passes the notebook to the bailiff, fingers brushing the worn cardboard cover one last time. The bailiff carries it up like evidence, placing it into Halston's waiting hand with an almost ceremonial stiffness. Halston flips through the pages, his casual smirk fading as he skims rows of dates, quotes, and hand-drawn charts mapping sentencing outcomes. For a heartbeat, his jaw tightens, the mask slipping. Then he snaps the notebook shut and tosses it back toward Amara like it's worthless. Quite the little researcher, huh? He sneers. Those scribbles won't change the facts of your case, his tone sharpens, hungry for the next blow. Standard community service won't do here, Halston pronounces, settling back in his chair. Ms. Lewis clearly has an attitude that needs correction. Keller starts, Your Honor, but Halston lifts a hand, killing the objection midair. Stand up, Ms. Lewis. Step into the center of the courtroom. Amara pushes to her feet, uncertainty in every motion, and walks forward until she stands alone on the courthouse's cold, echoing tile. Now, Halston says, satisfaction seeping into his voice, explain to everyone here why you thought you belonged in a five-star hotel like the Regal Plaza. What legitimate purpose could you possibly have? I was invited to, Amara starts. Louder, he barks. The reporter can't record your mumbling, she swallows. I was invited to participate in a program, she says, each word trembling but clear enough to carry. A program, Halston echoes slowly, savoring each syllable like a jockey. And who exactly invited you to this mysterious program? The National Merit Scholarship, maybe? He laughs before she can answer. Please, that program doesn't meet in hotel ballrooms. They use schools, universities, respectable venues. He turns slightly toward the gallery. I'll give her this. She's imaginative, Murmurs ripple through the spectators, some amused, others uneasy. Amara holds herself perfectly still, face a calm mask over burning shame. "Turn around, Ms. Lewis," Halston orders. "Let everyone admire your idea of courtroom attire." She hesitates. "That wasn't a suggestion," he snaps. Amara slowly pivots, her simple blue blouse and dark skirt neat and modest, if obviously inexpensive. "Your Honor," Keller ventures, "this is highly irregular and potentially—" "Keller, are you challenging my methods?" Halston growls. "Because I can hold you in contempt as quickly as your client," Halston finishes, daring Keller to speak again. Keller sinks back, mute. Halston lifts his phone. "I have Gregory Stanton, owner of the Regal Plaza, on the line," he announces. "Mr. Stanton, was any educational program booked in your conference rooms Tuesday afternoon?" A tinny voice answers, "No, Judge. Our meeting rooms are for business clients and hotel functions only." While they talk, the woman in the back row tilts her tablet, discreetly recording every word. Two sharply dressed professionals slip in beside her, whispering as they watch Halston. Amara remains in the center of the room, shoulders squared despite the humiliation. One tear threatens at the corner of her eye, but she blinks it away fiercely, refusing to let it fall in front of the judge who wants her broken. "Thank you, Mr. Stanton," Halston says smoothly. "The court appreciates your time." He disconnects, turning back to Amara. "Still want to insist you were there for a program?" "Yes, Your Honor," she replies, voice steadier now. Defiant to the end, he sighs theatrically. In Amara's pocket, her phone buzzes. She ignores it, unaware of the message flashing, "Hold steady, justice is coming. You're not alone." "Recess 15 minutes, Halston declares. The bailiff calls for all to rise as Halston sweeps out through the side door. The room erupts into hushed chatter the instant he disappears. Amara returns to the defense table, face composed, only her tightened grip betraying the storm inside. "I need the restroom," she whispers to Marcus. He studies her, pride and worry mingling. "You're stronger than I was at your age," he says. "I'm proud of you, baby." Amara slips out, following faded restroom signs. Only inside a locked stall does she finally let tears fall, silent and hot, shoulders shuddering with everything she's held in. After a minute, she forces herself to breathe, to stand, to slide the latch back. At the sink, she grips the counter until her knuckles pale, splashing cold water over her face. The bathroom door swings open, footsteps echoing on the tiled floor. A black woman in her 40s steps inside, suit of flawless charcoal that whispers money and authority. She's the same woman who watched from the back row. "Amara Lewis?" she asks, voice low but sure. Amara stiffens. "Yes." The woman offers a card embossed with a seal. "Dr. Simone Brooks, Educational Director for the National Scholars Initiative. We were supposed to meet at the Regal Plaza before our interview was interrupted." Recognition flashes across Amara's face. "Dr. Brooks, but the hotel owner just told the court there was no program." Simone sets her briefcase on the counter. "Gregory Stanton doesn't personally handle conference reservations," she explains calmly. "Our events run through corporate, under their diversity partnership. We reserve the same space every quarter. Someone on local management apparently didn't get the memo or didn't care enough to check before branding you a trespasser." "I owe you an apology for not stepping in sooner," Simone says quietly. "When you didn't show for the interview, we started asking questions." Her eyes flick toward the courtroom door. "What I've witnessed in there is disturbing, though not surprising." She nods at the notebook in Amara's grip. "May your tracking of Halston's rulings reached us weeks ago. We've been hearing similar complaints from other minority students all year. In his chambers, Halston loosens his tie and answers his private line. "Bill, Senator Lowell," comes the voice. "Judicial review panels meet next month. There's talk about needing more diversity on the bench." Halston chuckles. "Political correctness gone wild. I've sat here 20 years without a single successful challenge to my rulings." "Just tread lightly," Lowell warns. "Actually working one of those cases now," Halston replies. "Teaching a trespasser a lesson." Back in the restroom, Simone is already dialing. First, the Regal Plaza's corporate events office. "Yes, I need confirmation of today's scholarship interviews," she says crisply. "Thank you. Email it now." Next, she calls the State Judicial Review hotline. "We have live confirmation of what's been reported," she tells them. "It's unfolding exactly as described. Yes, everything is being recorded and preserved. You'll want to see this docket." Her last call is to a direct line labeled Carter and Sloan. "Thomas, it's Simone Brooks. We need that pro bono representation you promised, not next month. Right now." She ends the call and turns to Amara. "We've been assembling a case on Halston for months," she explains. "Your notes provided the pattern we needed, but we still lacked undeniable real-time proof of how he treats students like you in open court." The restroom door swings open again, and Marcus steps in cautiously after a quick knock from the hallway. "Amara?" he calls. Simone straightens. "Mr. Lewis, I'm Dr. Simone Brooks." She quickly lays out the essentials. "Your daughter was legitimately at the Regal Plaza for a scholarship interview. What Judge Halston did in that courtroom fits a documented pattern of discriminatory behavior from the bench we've been tracking for some time." Marcus's expression shifts from confused hurt to steely focus as he listens. "So what do we do now?" he asks. Simone answers without hesitation. "You both walk back into that courtroom like nothing has changed. Amara, you stay calm, no matter what he throws at you. The truth is lining up, but timing matters." Amara inhales slowly, shoulders lifting. "I can handle it," she says. "I'm not backing down." As they move toward the door, another woman steps in, wearing a navy blazer and a lanyard Amara hadn't noticed before. The badge reads, "Governor's Ethics Commission, Special Investigations Unit." The woman meets Amara's eyes and taps the screen of her tablet deliberately, where lines of live audio waveforms scroll by. Every word, every raised tone, every ruling from Halston's bench is being captured and preserved. Back in the courtroom, the gavel cracks like a gunshot. Court is reconvened, and Halston's face is tighter, color high in his cheeks as Amara returns to the defense table. After reflection, he begins without preamble. "I've determined an appropriate consequence for Ms. Lewis's conduct and her ongoing dishonesty." Papers rustle as he theatrically shuffles them, building suspense like a seasoned performer instead of an impartial judge. "The defendant will write a public apology to be printed in the county newspaper, admitting to trespass and misleading this court," Halston declares. "Additionally, she will complete 200 hours of community service." A wave of murmurs rolls through the benches at the sheer amount. Heads turn, eyebrows lift. Even the prosecutor glances up sharply, surprised by just how far Halston is pushing what should be a minor juvenile case. Furthermore, Halston adds, voice warming with satisfaction, "Those hours will be served at the Regal Plaza itself. Cleaning restrooms should give Ms. Lewis a lasting appreciation for respecting private property." Keller shifts uneasily. "Your Honor, That seems excessive for a second offense, Halston cuts in, and given her attitude, entirely proper. Do you want to lodge a formal objection, Mr. Keller? Risk a contempt citation along with her? Keller's shoulders slump. No, Your Honor, he murmurs. Very well, Halston replies, clearly pleased. Objection? The single word slices through the room like a blade. Everyone turns as a tall man in an immaculate suit rises from the back row and strides down the aisle. David Carter, Your Honor. From Carter and Sloan, he announces. I'll be representing Ms. Lewis from this point forward. Halston's face blazes red. This is highly irregular, Mr. Carter. We're in the middle of sentencing. Exactly why I'm intervening now, Carter answers smoothly, handing up documents. My motion to substitute counsel has already been filed with the clerk. Since no formal sentence has entered the record, we're procedurally sound. Halston scans the paperwork, hunting for a technicality that isn't there, then jerks a nod. Fine. Mr. Keller, you're excused. Keller gathers his files with visible relief and all but flees the well. Carter steps into his place, posture relaxed, but eyes sharp. Your Honor, the defense moves to dismiss all charges against Ms. Lewis immediately, based on lack of evidence and flawed procedure. Denied, Halston snaps. Carter doesn't flinch. Then I must ask why her case is being handled so differently from similar matters you heard earlier this morning. Halston's knuckles whiten around the gavel. Each case is unique, Counselor. Of course, Carter agrees mildly, opening a folder. Which is why I reviewed your docket from the last 6 months. There appears to be a striking statistical pattern in sentencing outcomes based on certain defendant characteristics. The room bristles with attention. Halston's jaw tightens. Are you accusing this court of impropriety? He demands, voice rising. I'm simply placing facts into the record, Carter replies, unshaken. More observers slip into the back rows, some with notepads, others with badges, all facing Halston. I'll hold you in contempt, Halston warns, gavel tapping in short, angry bursts. One more insinuation, and you're out. Carter nods slightly. Then please let the record reflect your hostility toward the defense's lawful questions about disparities in how this courtroom operates, Your Honor. Perhaps you can explain, Carter continues, voice calm, why Ms. Lewis's stated reason for being at the hotel was never verified before this spectacle. Halston straightens. The owner of the Regal Plaza told this court there was no such program. His word is sufficient. Carter opens another folder. Is it? He asks quietly, holding up a document. Here is corporate confirmation that the National Scholars Initiative reserved the Maplewood Suite that afternoon. He approaches the bench, offering the letter on heavy company letterhead. Furthermore, Carter adds, Ms. Lewis was invited by name, as shown in this email from Dr. Simone Brooks, our program director. The prosecutor stands awkwardly. Your Honor, the state has not received this evidence. Because no one bothered to look, Carter replies. The defense shouldn't have to prove innocence when the prosecution hasn't even established basic guilt. Halston's phone rings again. He punches speaker. Mr. Stanton, were you aware of any scholarship event at your hotel last Tuesday? There's a pause. I don't handle every booking personally, Judge, Stanton admits. Corporates sometimes schedules events without looping me in. Carter seizes the opening. So your earlier statement was made without full information, he notes. Objection, the prosecutor blurts. Sustained, Halston says quickly. Mr. Carter, You don't interrogate witnesses without permission. More officials drift into the room, filling the side benches. A woman wearing a State Bar Association badge takes a front row seat, notebook open. Halston notices, sweat gathering at his temples despite the humming air vents. He tugs at his collar. "The court will take these new documents under advisement," he announces stiffly. "This last-minute evidence feels like an ambush." "With respect," Carter replies, "one phone call would have uncovered it before today." Halston pivots. "The defendant should have clearly explained this supposed appointment earlier," he says. "This court can't chase every story." Carter's voice hardens for the first time. "Ms. Lewis tried repeatedly, Your Honor. The record will show you cut her off and ridiculed her explanation each time." A ripple passes through the room. Spectators nod subtly. The prosecutor shuffles paperwork, pointedly avoiding eye contact with the bench as the distance between them widens. Halston checks his watch with exaggerated annoyance. "This court's time is valuable, Mr. Carter. We can't squander it on an overblown trespass case." Carter stands unruffled, hands loosely clasped. The contrast between his measured composure and Halston's fraying temper grows more obvious with each exchange, and the gallery feels it. Even the stenographer pauses briefly, eyes flicking up from the machine to watch the judge struggling to reassert control. "Since we're talking about efficiency," Carter says, "I've noticed minor charges from certain neighborhoods move very slowly through your courtroom, while similar cases from others fly by with minimal scrutiny." Halston's eyes flash. "Watch yourself, Counselor." "Just pointing out the record," Carter answers. "Shoplifting and vandalism earlier received warnings and light service. Ms. Lewis, with an invitation and documentation, nearly walked out of here branded a repeat criminal." Halston leans forward, voice dropping. "One more insinuation like that, and I'll hold you in contempt." "Mr. Carter." The threat hangs thick in the air. Carter doesn't move. "I'm not insinuating anything," he replies. "I'm asking the court to confront what the numbers show." A few latecomers stand along the wall, clipboards in hand. The weight of watching eyes presses against Halston's carefully curated image of unquestioned authority. "To clarify matters," Carter says, "the defense would like to call Dr. Simone Brooks, Educational Director for the National Scholars Initiative, to testify regarding Ms. Lewis's presence at the hotel." Halston bristles. "This is an arraignment and sentencing hearing, not a circus." "It's also where a young woman's future is being decided," Carter replies evenly. "The least this court can do is hear from the person who invited her there." Before Halston can shut it down, Simone rises from the back row. The bailiff looks to the bench. Halston hesitates, then nods sharply. "Fine," briefly. Simone takes the stand, laying one hand on the worn Bible, the other steady at her side, as she's sworn in. Her ID badge, heavy with titles and logos, rests against her blazer, plainly visible to everyone watching. Once seated, Simone folds her hands neatly. "Dr. Brooks," Carter begins, "could you explain the National Scholars Initiative and why Ms. Lewis was scheduled to be at the Regal Plaza that afternoon?" "Our program identifies exceptional students from underrepresented communities," Simone says. "Amara came to our attention because of her outstanding grades in community work despite significant obstacles. She was invited for a semi-finalist interview in a professional setting at the hotel. This character narrative is irrelevant to the trespass charge," Halston interjects. "We're not here to hand out gold stars. It goes directly to motive," Carter counters. "If Ms. Lewis had legitimate business there, Trespass collapses. Simone continues, unshaken. We use the Regal Plaza because it's a neutral, professional environment. Candidates travel from multiple districts. The hotel's conference suites let us host them in one central, safe location. Halston narrows his eyes. Why not meet at a school or public library? Why a luxury hotel? Simone meets his stare. Because we want our scholars to feel valued, she replies. Many come from communities where polished boardrooms and concierge desks are things they only see on TV. Partnering with the hotel sends a message. Their potential deserves the same environment corporate executives take for granted. Carter nods. Why Amara specifically? Simone smiles faintly at the young woman. Ms. Lewis maintains a 4.0 GPA while working evenings at a grocery store and volunteering at her neighborhood library, she explains. She mentors younger students and still ranks near the top of her class. Our committee was impressed by how much she's accomplished with so few resources. That's why she was invited to compete for a full scholarship. Again, this isn't a college brochure, Halston snaps. Her grade point average doesn't matter here. It matters because it demolishes the story you've built, Carter replies. She wasn't casing equipment. She was trying to attend a scheduled interview. Her background underscores how little sense it makes to risk everything just to wander around a restricted hallway for fun. A few jurors from earlier cases linger, visibly uncomfortable with Halston's dismissal. Sensing the tide turning, the prosecutor finally rises. Your Honor, in light of this new testimony, the state requests a continuance to properly investigate these claims. Halston waves him off as though he's an annoying intern. His attention has shifted back to Amara, whose pen moves quietly over her notebook. Ms. Lewis, I've had enough of your scribbling, he barks. Hand that notebook over to the court. Now, Carter rises before Amara can move. Objection, Your Honor. Those pages relate directly to her defense and our preparation. Halston drums his fingers on the bench, glaring down. This court will decide what's relevant, he growls. The gallery holds its breath. No one misses the fact that he seems more troubled by a teenager's notebook than by the possibility that he might have just orchestrated a wrongful conviction. Since we're discussing your courtroom, let's talk about time, Carter says evenly. Could you explain why cases involving black and brown defendants routinely consume more of your valuable minutes than comparable cases with white defendants? How dare you! Halston explodes, slamming the gavel so hard it echoes. This is outright contempt. One more accusation like that, and I will have you physically removed from this courtroom, counselor. Carter doesn't blink. I'm quoting your own public records, Your Honor. For minor offenses, defendants of color average 43 minutes before your bench. White defendants with the same charges average 17. Murmurs surge. Halston's fury spikes. Clear the courtroom, he roars. Everyone out, except essential personnel. No one moves. The bailiff hesitates, eyes darting to the cluster of officials in the front rows, unsure whose orders really matter now. Carter turns back towards the witness stand. I'd like Dr. Brooks to provide one last piece of context about Ms. Lewis's presence at the Regal Plaza, he says. Before Halston can object, Simone is already sitting upright, still under oath, hands folded. The bailiff glances at the judge. Halston's glare could cut glass, but he doesn't dare order her down with so many official observers listening for his next misstep. Dr. Brooks, what does this afternoon represent for Ms. Lewis? Carter asks. Simone glances at Amara before answering. For students like her, days like this are turning points, she says. Either the system confirms their work matters, or it proves the rules were never meant for them. Amara entered that hotel believing she'd earned a seat at the table. Instead, she was treated as an intruder for daring to show up. The prosecutor clears his throat again, this time more firmly. Your Honor, in light of this record, the state is prepared to reconsider these charges. At minimum, we need time to interview hotel staff and confirm corporate bookings. His tone carries the wary distance of someone edging away from a sinking ship. Halston ignores him, watching Amara write as though every stroke of her pen is a personal insult. Time stretches. Finally, Halston snaps, Ms. Lewis, I gave you an order. Bring that notebook to the bench. Amara's hand freezes mid-sentence. Carter steps closer beside her. Respectfully, Your Honor, those are private research notes compiled before today. Forcing her to surrender them mid-hearing crosses every line of fair process. A buzz ripples through the rows as people realize this fight is about far more than a spiral-bound pad. Halston's composure finally fractures. I'm not asking, he roars. I want to see what she's writing about my courtroom. The words hang there, raw and revealing. It isn't justice he's protecting. It's his image. Simone's colleague from the Ethics Commission scribbles something on her tablet, expression unreadable. Carter glances toward them, then back at Amara, as if to silently ask whether she's ready for what comes next. Amara slowly lifts her head, meeting Halston's stare for the first time without flinching. The room goes so quiet, the hum of the fluorescent lights becomes audible. For a moment, she looks like she might finally break and hand the notebook over. Instead, she closes it gently and holds it against her chest. Actually, she says, voice clear enough to reach the far corner, I can explain exactly what I've been documenting. The silence deepens, stretching like a tight wire. Whatever satisfaction Halston felt at forcing her to speak fades when he catches the steadiness in her eyes. Proceed, he says warily. Amara rises, no longer hunched or hesitant, and steps a little closer to the center of the courtroom. 19, but in that moment she carries herself like someone who has spent a lifetime preparing for exactly this confrontation. For the past 7 months, Amara begins, I've been tracking judicial misconduct across several county courtrooms for a student research project on equal justice. She opens the notebook, pages fanned like a deck of cards, charts, timelines, highlighted quotes filling every margin. What started as an assignment turned into something bigger when I saw the same patterns repeating over and over again, especially in this courtroom. Under your gavel, Your Honor. She turns slowly, letting her gaze move across the benches. I watched defendants of color receive harsher sentences than white defendants for the exact same charges, Amara says. I saw probation where others got jail time, fines reduced for some and maximized for others. Dismissals for white defendants came quickly, while everyone else had to fight for basic consideration. White dismissal rates are 78% higher in your courtroom alone. She flips to a page dense with numbers and arrows. Court-appointed attorneys for black and brown defendants average 4.3 minutes to speak with their clients before proceedings start, she continues. Attorneys for white defendants get 12.7. Same calendar, same charges, same courtroom. Different outcomes. Every dot, every line in this notebook is a record of who gets grace here and who never even gets a chance. Judge Halston opens his mouth to cut her off, but Carter lifts a hand. Your Honor, you explicitly asked Ms. Lewis to explain her notes. She's doing exactly that. Let her finish, Amara pushes on, voice gaining weight. I logged 137 cases across 3 county courtrooms, including 42 in this one alone, she says. The numbers reveal disparities you can't explain away as simple differences between cases. She flips to another annotated page. In your courtroom alone, Judge Halston, black defendants serve sentences averaging 67% longer than white defendants for the same charges, Amara reads. You interrupt black defendants an average of 7.2 times per hearing, compared with 1.3 interruptions for white defendants. A low buzz ripples through the gallery. Halston bangs his gavel, but the sharp cracks sound weak and hollow. This is outrageous, he sputters, the rambling of a child who doesn't understand how the law actually works. Before he can say more, Simone rises. Amara Lewis is hardly just any student, Your Honor, she says. She's the youngest recipient of the State Youth Leadership Medal presented by Governor Haynes last year. Her research on justice disparities was chosen for national presentation at the Civic Rights Institute's Youth Summit. Simone steps toward the bench, holding a slim folder. Her visit to the Regal Plaza served 2 purposes, she continues. First, her scholarship interview. Second, a scheduled conversation with the hotel's corporate counsel about their community partnership programs, which she's studying as potential models for court reform. Before Halston can respond, the woman from the back row strides forward, badge now clearly visible over her blazer. Director Samantha Williams, State Judicial Ethics Commission, she announces. Judge Halston, we've been monitoring your court after repeated complaints about unequal treatment. She gestures to colleagues lining the wall. Our office reviewed Ms. Lewis's preliminary data and found it mirrors our own investigation. Her statistics are unusually sophisticated for someone her age. Color drains from Halston's face. This is an ambush, he snaps. A coordinated hit job. No, Your Honor, Williams replies evenly. This is oversight. She nods toward Amara. Ms. Lewis worked independently. Her notebook simply adds another layer of proof to what we were already uncovering. Halston grasps at the remaining thread. None of this erases the fact she trespassed at the Regal Plaza. He insists. Carter steps closer, lifting a tablet. Then let's look at the hotel's security footage together, shall we? Carter taps the screen, projecting grainy video onto a monitor. The courtroom watches as Amara appears at the Regal's front desk, handing over her ID. A uniformed employee smiles and gestures toward the elevators, escorting her down the hallway toward the Maplewood conference room. The timestamp matches the supposed trespass. As you can see, Carter says, she was where staff directed her for a scheduled interview. So the core allegation itself collapses, Carter continues. Ms. Lewis had explicit permission to be there for legitimate business in an authorized space. Director Williams faces the gallery. Our commission has been compiling evidence on Judge Halston for months, she explains. We needed a day with multiple witnesses and full documentation. Today provided that opportunity. Halston scans the room, finally recognizing how small his bench has become. State officials now line the back wall. Reporters' fingers race over keyboards. Several well-known attorneys, once merely curious observers, sit forward with sharpened attention. This is a witch hunt, Halston blurts. I've devoted 2 decades to this bench. Exactly, Williams answers. And over those 20 years, you've built a record of bias that cuts against the very idea of equal justice under law. Williams opens an embossed folder and withdraws a document bearing the state seal. Judge Robert Halston, she reads, under the authority of the State Judicial Ethics Commission and this state's Supreme Court, you are hereby suspended from judicial duties effective immediately, pending full investigation of misconduct, abuse of authority, and systemic discrimination in your courtroom. His gavel slips from numb fingers, clattering against wood in a dull, broken echo. Within hours, the courthouse feels like a shaken anthill. In the main chamber, Chief Judge Eleanor Michaels convenes an emergency session to reassess Amara's case. Her tone is steady, her questions precise. After reviewing the footage, emails, and ethics reports, she speaks clearly. This court dismisses all charges against Amara Lewis with prejudice. The record will reflect they were unfounded and improperly pursued. Judge Michaels turns toward Amara. Ms. Lewis, on behalf of this court and our justice system, I offer a formal apology for what you endured today, she says. What happened to you contradicts the values we swear to uphold. In the gallery, Regal Plaza owner Gregory Stanton shifts uneasily, the weight of his earlier phone call hanging over him like a storm cloud he helped create. After the hearing, Stanton approaches Amar and Marcus in the hallway, shoulders squared but eyes humbled. Ms. Lewis, I owe you a personal apology, he says, extending a hand. I spoke without knowing the full story and helped fuel this mess. After learning about your work, I'd like to offer you a paid internship in our corporate responsibility program. We need voices like yours at the table. Across town at Ethics Commission headquarters, Williams and her team dive into Halston's history. Analysts pull years of electronic records while others haul boxes of old files into conference rooms. The pattern is even uglier than we feared, Williams tells her deputy, scrolling through a heat map of sentencing data. Minority defendants received on average 60% longer sentences than white defendants with matching charges and records. Another analyst hurries in, clutching a fresh report. Director, we flagged 23 cases where the disparities are especially extreme, she says. 3 people are still locked up, even though their situations mirror white defendants who walked away with probation. Williams's jaw tightens. Mark those for immediate review, she orders. Loop in the public defender's office. We're filing for resentencing as quickly as humanly possible. News outlets swarm with predictable hunger. Early headlines scream the dramatic angle. Teen researcher topples, biased judge, and student's notebook exposes courthouse corruption. Camera crews camp outside the courthouse doors, pouncing on anyone even loosely connected to the case. By nightfall, deeper reporting emerges. The State Herald runs a front-page analysis titled, "When Those Who Judge Escape Judgment." The story quickly shifts from spectacle to serious examination of power and accountability. Legal scholars fill primetime panels, trading careful sentences. What we witnessed is both failure and progress, explains Professor Elena Morrison, a judicial ethics expert. Failure because a judge displayed obvious bias for years without serious challenge. Progress because through the persistence of an extraordinary young woman and proper oversight, consequences finally caught up. Her words replay in loops across channels and social feeds overnight. Amara finds herself cast as an unwilling spokesperson. At a hastily arranged press conference, she stands beside Simone, steady despite the forest of microphones. My project was never about hunting one person, she says carefully. It was about documenting patterns that shape people's lives every single day. One biased judge affects thousands of families over a career, not just the ones you see on camera. Combined with the Commission's findings, Amara's data becomes ammunition for lawmakers. State Senator Victor Lang announces plans to introduce the Judicial Accountability Act. At the press conference unveiling the bill, he gestures toward Amara. Her careful documentation gave us the proof we needed, he tells reporters. This legislation mandates independent review of sentencing patterns, required bias training, and a more transparent process for selecting judges. At Regal Plaza's corporate offices, executives launched their own investigation. How did such a catastrophic miscommunication happen? They discover Stanton's executive assistant, Gregory Palmer, intentionally buried emails about educational programs using their space. I didn't think those events fit our brand, he admits during his exit interview. They don't bring in much revenue and attract the wrong crowd. His firing is immediate and public. Corporate issues a company-wide memo reaffirming its inclusion policies and clarifying that community partnerships are central to its mission. Mandatory training rolls out for every employee, from executives to night shift custodians. Across town, Halston barricades himself inside his Lakeside Heights mansion, blinds drawn against the reporters clustered on his lawn. He hires Nolan Bryce, a high-profile defense attorney known for rehabilitating disgraced public officials. Judge Halston's remarks are being twisted out of context, Bryce insists to cameras stationed at the end of the driveway. His long, distinguished service record speaks for itself. We're confident a full, fair review will clear him of these politically motivated claims. The statement backfires instantly when the Ethics Commission releases transcripts of Halston's comments from multiple hearings, revealing a steady drumbeat of contempt toward minority defendants. Even Halston's former political backers begin inching away. Their public statements slide from full-throated support to cautious calls for all the facts within days. Governor Haynes addresses the scandal during a scheduled press conference. Our justice system only works when judges are genuinely impartial, she says. These allegations are grave. My administration will track the Commission's findings closely and respond accordingly. Behind closed doors, the governor's legal team drafts contingency plans for removing Halston permanently if the investigation confirms misconduct. They also begin vetting potential replacements, prioritizing candidates with proven histories of fair sentencing and community trust. Meanwhile, the State Bar Association launches its own inquiry. If true, this conduct represents a profound breach of professional ethics. Their public statement reads plainly, legal aid groups and community advocates set up a hotline for people who passed through Halston's courtroom. The phone lines light up almost immediately. Within days, more than 200 former defendants and family members share stories that echo the same themes of humiliation and disproportionate punishment. Carter's firm announces pro bono support for appeals in the worst cases. Equal justice is a right, not a luxury, he tells reporters. The following Monday, Amara walks back into school, trying to blend into the corridors she once moved through invisibly. Now classmates whisper as she passes, some offering quiet congratulations, others just staring. Teachers treat her with a new, careful respect. In civics class, her teacher invites her to speak about what she's learned. Amara talks about paying attention, documenting patterns, and refusing to pretend not to see injustice. As the second week of investigations unfolds, Forensic analysts comb through Halston's email archives. They uncover something even more sinister than sentencing disparities. Messages between Halston and certain prosecutors discussing deterrent sentencing for defendants from what he calls problem neighborhoods. The Ethics Commission forwards the entire cache to the Attorney General, shifting the matter from misconduct to possible criminal conspiracy. The stakes for everyone involved suddenly escalate. On the day of Halston's formal hearing, the State Judicial Center's largest chamber fills an hour early. Television cameras stack along the back wall, red recording lights glowing like tiny eyes. Security screens every badge at the doors. Halston slips in through a side entrance with Bryce at his elbow, avoiding the media crush outside. His once imperious stride is gone, replaced by a slow, uncertain shuffle. He takes his seat at the respondent's table, posture small in a suit that now hangs loosely from weight, lost over 2 sleepless weeks. The irony lands heavy. The man who towered over defendants for decades now occupies their side of the room. A 5-judge review panel files in, led by State Supreme Court Justice Rachel Chen, faces expressionless as they settle behind the long raised desk. This hearing will determine whether Judge Robert Halston has violated our judicial code and state constitution, Justice Chen announces. These are not criminal proceedings, but their findings will decide if he remains fit for the bench. Director Williams presents first. She moves through slides of charts, timelines, and quotes, building the case piece by piece in a steady, relentless rhythm that leaves little room for rebuttal. The panel sees statistical breakdowns of Halston's sentences, sworn statements from former defendants, courtroom transcripts showing dismissive language, and finally, the private emails. One projected message stands out. In it, Halston urges Assistant District Attorney Mark Phillips to seek the harshest penalties for defendants from so-called problem districts while reserving diversion programs for kids who made mistakes from better areas. The double standard is impossible to ignore on the big screen. Halston's former clerk, Alexia Ruiz, testifies next. She describes being told to arrange dockets so particular prosecutors handled cases involving minority defendants. He called it pairing the right attorney with the right case, she explains, voice tight. But it was obvious he wanted certain outcomes. As the testimony stacks up, the defense's strategy of denial starts crumbling under the weight of written words and lived experiences. Even those who once praised Halston's toughness now retreat. Stanton, initially lined up as a character witness, submits instead a sworn statement. In it, he recounts a golf game where Halston bragged about keeping undesirables away from places like the Regal. He said strict sentences protected property values and kept certain people where they belong, Stanton admits. I didn't challenge him. I regret that deeply now. Assistant District Attorney Mark Phillips takes the stand, looking exhausted. There was an unspoken expectation in chambers, he testifies. If you didn't push for the stiff sentences he wanted, your cases got buried or scheduled badly. Young prosecutors understood that cooperating meant smoother careers. By the second afternoon, Halston's wall of professional allies has thinned to almost nothing, replaced with cautious distance or open condemnation. As the day's testimony winds down, Halston requests permission to address the panel. Justice Chen allows it, perhaps hoping for genuine remorse. He approaches the podium slowly, hands clasped. He opens with practiced humility, citing 2 decades of service and insisting he never intended harm. But as panel members press him about specific emails, his voice sharpens, the mask slipping with every pointed question. "You don't understand what it takes to keep order," he snaps, when Justice Chen asks about the sentencing disparities. "Someone has to make hard calls to keep communities safe, and those hard calls fell overwhelmingly on minority defendants, didn't they?" she asks. His composure shatters. "Look at where the crime comes from," he blurts. "Someone has to keep certain neighborhoods in line, or everyone pays." A shocked murmur sweeps through the chamber. Camera operators zoom in, capturing every reddening inch of his face. "You want honesty?" Halston continues, chest heaving. "Some people respond to second chances. Others only learn from consequences. I gave each what they needed, and I won't apologize for it." Court reporters' fingers fly, transcribing the unfiltered prejudice spilling from the mouth of a man who once demanded respect. The outburst ricochets across social media within minutes, clipped and shared without commentary, because none is needed. Any remaining defense of misunderstanding or misquotation evaporates. After a brief recess, the panel retreats to deliberate. They are gone less than 2 hours before returning, faces grave but decisive. Everyone in the room seems to know what the verdict will be before Justice Chen begins speaking. This panel finds that Judge Robert Halston has flagrantly violated the judicial code through persistent bias, abuse of discretion, and conduct that erodes public confidence in our courts, she announces. "We recommend his permanent removal from the bench and refer him to the State Bar for disbarment proceedings." She pauses. "We also forward our findings to the Attorney General for potential civil rights charges under state and federal law." Halston sits frozen, as if sheer stillness could stop the avalanche. 2 decades of power and status collapse into dust in front of cameras and colleagues. When the hearing adjourns, he rises shakily and shuffles toward the exit. Just outside the chamber doors, he stops dead. Standing in the hallway, surrounded by a documentary crew, is Amars watching him with steady, unblinking eyes. Their gazes lock for a long, charged second. The man who once demanded she remember her place now has nowhere left to stand. Halston looks away first, pushing past cameras that tilt to follow his retreat. 6 months roll by. What started as a single courtroom clash has evolved into a statewide reckoning that no one can dismiss as a momentary scandal. At the annual judicial conference in the state capitol, Chief Justice Luis Morales addresses hundreds of judges seated beneath ornate chandeliers. "The strength of our system lies not just in written laws, but in their fair application," he says. "The Halston case forced us to confront hard truths about bias and institutional blind spots. An ongoing statewide audit has already identified 5 more judges with troubling sentencing patterns. 2 of those judges resign rather than face formal inquiry. 3 more contest the findings, their courtrooms temporarily reassigned while their records undergo deeper review." "This isn't a purge," Director Williams explains during a panel at the State Bar's convention. "It's triage. We're trying to repair a system people stopped trusting. Every biased ruling doesn't just hurt one person. It damages faith in justice itself." New rules roll out quickly. All judges must now complete intensive bias training each year. Sentencing data becomes public, posted online every quarter and broken down by race, zip code, and charge. A citizen review group joins the judicial appointment process, bringing community members into a space once reserved for insiders. Sunshine starts seeping into corners that used to operate comfortably in the dark. At the Regal Plaza, transformation looks more concrete. Staff attend workshops led by community organizers. Hiring practices shift. The company establishes the Future Pathways Fellowship for young people from underserved neighborhoods interested in hospitality and business leadership. We're honored to have Ms. Lewis serve as a student advisor to this program, the new diversity director announces at the launch. Her insight keeps us honest about who we're really serving. Backed by a grant from the State University's Criminal Justice Department, Amara's research grows beyond one county. She presents her methodology at a national judicial reform conference, where advocates seize on her approach. What makes her work powerful, explains Professor Jonathan Rivers, is that it converts gut feelings into numbers. When you can show a judge interrupts defendants of color 4 times more often, it's hard to call that imagination. The Judicial Accountability Act passes with rare bipartisan support. At the signing ceremony, Governor Haynes stands with legislators, advocates, and a visibly nervous Amara. This law ensures court proceedings are recorded, sentencing guidelines are transparent, and complaints about judges receive independent review, the governor says. What happened in Judge Halston's courtroom will not be allowed to repeat. Applause swells as the pen meets paper. For people who once stood alone before Halston's bench, the reforms aren't abstract. A special task force re-examines more than 300 of his cases. Dozens of convictions are overturned or sentences sharply reduced. A class action lawsuit against the county results in a restitution fund for those whose lives were derailed. I lost 3 years for something a white kid got probation for, says Malcolm Turner, newly released. I can't get that time back, Malcolm continues, speaking at a community forum, but at least now people finally believe what we've been saying for years. Law schools revise their ethics courses, building entire modules around the Halston case. Bar exam questions now probe future lawyers on their duty to report misconduct and the real-world impact of judicial bias on defendants' lives and communities. As graduation approaches, Amara's mailbox fills with thick envelopes. Prestigious universities across the country offer full scholarships, eager to claim the young woman whose notebook helped reshape a state. One letter bears the presidential seal, inviting her to join a special advisory group on criminal justice reform. The scale of it all feels surreal, but she keeps returning to the same guiding question: what comes next? Exactly 1 year after that first explosive hearing, Amara stands once more in what used to be Courtroom 3, now renamed the Equal Justice Chamber. Sunlight pours through tall windows onto a diverse crowd gathered for Judge Maya Patterson's swearing in. When I walked into a courtroom last year, Amara begins at the podium, I never imagined standing here as part of its rebirth. Judge Patterson, a former public defender in her early 40s, known for fierce advocacy, smiles from her place near the bench she'll soon occupy. The bench itself has been replaced with a lower, more open design that faces the gallery directly rather than looming above it. Back then, I just wanted proof, Amara continues. Proof that what we were seeing wasn't in our heads, but in the numbers. Justice doesn't belong exclusively to judges or lawyers, Amara says, voice steady. It belongs to every person who walks through those doors. When the system fails some of us, it fails all of us. The audience listens in rapt silence. After the ceremony, Simone announces an expansion of the National Scholars Initiative, including a new track for students committed to legal and judicial reform. Our first group includes young people from every corner of the state, Simone explains, gesturing to a row of 20 teenagers standing to be recognized. Their faces mirror the community's full diversity. Each wears a small pin shaped like balanced scales, just slightly tilted, symbolizing a system still correcting itself. Cameras flash as the students grin nervously, caught between pride and the weight of expectation. The courthouse itself feels transformed. Posters outlining basic rights hang in multiple languages along the main corridor. Staff in bright blue vests serve as community navigators, helping people understand dockets and paperwork. A large digital display in the lobby shows quarterly sentencing statistics, broken down by demographics, and open for anyone to examine. Transparency, once resisted, has become part of the building's daily rhythm. The bricks are the same, Marcus says quietly as he and Amara walk past the display, but everything inside feels different. Halston himself has faded from the spotlight. Disbarred and stripped of his title, he quietly settles multiple civil suits, losing much of the wealth he once flaunted. Former colleagues who enabled him attend mandatory retraining or quietly slip into retirement. Mark Phillips now works with the Ethics Commission, helping flag troubling patterns in other courts. Silence made me complicit, he tells a room of new prosecutors during training. That's a weight I'll always carry. Don't repeat my mistake. Marcus finds his own mission, founding a volunteer network for parents whose kids are facing charges. He teaches them how to read court calendars, ask questions, and advocate effectively. Navigating this system shouldn't require a law degree, Marcus tells a circle of anxious parents at a community center. Knowledge is power, especially when your child is standing in front of a judge. Back at home, Amara stares at a kitchen table crowded with acceptance letters. She's chosen to major in law and public policy, focusing on judicial ethics and structural reform. Her original spiral-bound notebook, once nearly confiscated in Halston's courtroom, has been requested by the State Historical Society for its civil rights collection. Before agreeing, Amara carefully scans every page, backing up the data that sparked a movement. In the margin of the very first entry, she adds a final note. Change began here, with questions no one wanted asked, but everyone needed answered. Before leaving for university, Amara revisits the classroom where her project first took shape. Her old teacher has invited juniors and seniors to listen. I never set out to topple a judge or become some symbol, she tells them. All I did was pay attention, write down what I saw, and refuse to pretend it wasn't happening. Dozens of pens move as students copy her words. She holds up a fresh notebook identical to the original. This is still my most powerful weapon, she says, tapping the cover. Not because of what's inside yet, but because it represents a promise to be honest about what you see, even when it's uncomfortable. Around the room, faces sharpen with new awareness. The idea that they too might challenge injustice begins to take root. Her closing line soon appears on posters in courthouses and classrooms statewide. Bold letters declare, "Justice isn't automatic. It demands vigilance, courage, and the refusal to look away." Months later, Amara spots the phrase printed on pamphlets at legal aid clinics and projected behind speakers at reform rallies. The words belong to her, but the fight they describe belongs to everyone who chooses to stand up. In the Equal Justice Chamber's lobby, a small exhibit chronicles the Halston investigation. One display features a blown-up image of Amara's notebook pages beside anonymized charts of sentencing data. Visitors linger, tracing the lines of ink that tipped a balance of power. A plaque underneath reads, "One student's careful notes helped realign an entire system toward the promise carved above these doors." Outside the legal world, Amara's story inspires artists, filmmakers, and young activists. A documentary crew that filmed Halston's final walk now releases a feature-length film about the case. Community groups host screenings, followed by discussions about local courts. Teenagers line up afterward to ask how to start their own data projects, armed with little more than curiosity, notebooks, and the determination to be taken seriously. None of this erases the harm Halston caused, and Amara never pretends it does. People still carry records, trauma, and missing years. But now there are mechanisms, however imperfect, to challenge injustice as it appears. And there is proof that a single person paying attention can change something massive, even when the odds and the institution seem impossibly stacked against them. That possibility alone keeps her moving forward. Back on the Black Culture Stories channel, the narrative comes full circle. The episode recounts Amara's journey from that first humiliating courtroom appearance to the sweeping reforms that followed. Viewers watch as she evolves from frightened defendant to poised advocate, standing beside judges, lawmakers, and community members. The story doesn't pretend everything is fixed, but it shows clearly that silence is no longer the only option. The host's voiceover shifts from the final courtroom images to a direct appeal. If Amara's stand against bias and abuse of power resonated with you, he says, we'd love for you to support what we do here at Black Culture Stories. Graphics highlight the channel logo as he explains how their team uncovers stories about ordinary people taking extraordinary risks for justice. Every like, comment, and subscription helps us keep shining a light on the places most people never see, he continues. Clips play of other episodes featuring workers, students, and neighbors challenging discrimination in schools, workplaces, and city halls. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our weekly stories about people who refuse to stay quiet when the system failed them. Your engagement genuinely makes these stories possible. The video closes by inviting viewers into the conversation. Tell us what part of Amara's story hit you the hardest, the host urges. Comments begin filling with personal experiences of unfair teachers, biased bosses, and intimidating court dates. Some share how they plan to start tracking what they see in their own communities. Notebooks ready, determined not to let patterns stay invisible anymore. Screens across living rooms, buses, and break rooms freeze on the final shot of Amara leaving the courthouse. Sunlight on her face, notebook tucked under her arm. The narrator's last words echo. Justice doesn't move on its own, it moves because people push. For many watching, that line lands as less of a conclusion and more of a personal challenge. The question is, who will push next? Somewhere in a small apartment not unlike Amara's, another teenager sits replaying the video, eyes shining with recognition. They grab an old notebook from a backpack and start a fresh page, labeling it Observations. Maybe it's about school discipline, traffic stops, or housing denials. Whatever the focus, the first step is the same. Pay attention, write it down, and refuse to be told it doesn't matter. Black Culture Stories signs off with its familiar outro, but this time the call to action feels heavier, more urgent. Join our community of everyday justice seekers, the host says. Share this episode with someone who needs to be reminded that their voice counts, their notes matter, and their courage could spark change. The screen fades to black, leaving only possibility and the next blank page waiting. For those of you who remember segregated lunch counters and black and white TV news, Amara's story is a reminder that unfair judges did not disappear with the past. Justice can still tilt against certain neighborhoods and skin tones. Halston's fall shows that a courtroom only stays honest when ordinary people are watching closely, taking notes, and refusing to be shamed into silence. No matter how powerful the man with the gavel appears. Many of you know from Vietnam, Watergate, and factory strikes that courage rarely travels alone. Amara had her notebook, yes, but she also had her father, Dr. Brooks, Attorney Carter, and those quiet faces in the back row who kept the cameras rolling. Real change for our grandchildren comes when one brave voice is lifted, echoed, and protected by a whole community that refuses to look away. At 65 or 70, you understand that real reform is slow, like healing after surgery. Halston lost his robe in a single hearing, but the deeper work took months. Audits, new laws, retraining, and second chances for people he'd harmed. That is the invitation for elders today. To lend our wisdom, our voting power, and our steady voices so the next generation does not stand alone. Friends, after hearing how a simple spiral notebook helped expose Judge Halston and reopen the doors of justice, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever seen something unfair at work, in court, or even at school and wished you had spoken up or written it down? What would taking notes for justice look like in your own town? Share your story in the comments, tap like, and subscribe to Black Culture Stories so more people your age and mine can learn, speak up, and stay strong together. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode.